Companies need to be both healthy and smart to succeed, and smart is already taken. If you don't believe that, I don't know how much more I could convince you, because I think the facts are pretty clear that there is a surplus of like super ultra talented, intelligent, and smart people. And there's companies that do what they do with the best possible strategy and the best possible smarts. There's so many of them who are hyper smart that you can't differentiate yourself in the marketplace on smarts.
Mm-hmm.
You need to differentiate yourself on team health, which goes back to culture.
You're listening to The Pivotal Leader, where modern leaders talk about the moments that shifted their organizational cultures and pivoted their teams to success. Hey everyone, this is Gina Trimarco, Chief Results Officer of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. Each week on The Pivotal Leader, I feature inspirational leaders who know how to positively impact their customers, employees, and brand through culture building. But before we jump in, here's a pivotal fact. Your survive versus thrive ability hinges on your investment in your employees and your customers. If you don't provide meaningful, purposeful training and growth opportunities for your employees and results for your customers, well, they just might leave you and head straight for your competition. If you're looking for a fresh way to keep your stakeholders engaged, shoot me an email, gina@pivot10.com, or visit our website at pivot10.com. In this episode of The Pivotal Leader, I interviewed John Fulwider, CEO of Gear 80. John helps entrepreneurial leadership teams get everything they want from their businesses. He helps implement a complete proven system with a set of simple, practical tools that helps them get vision, traction, and healthy. And this is all based on Gino Wickman's book, Traction. John founded his fourth company, Gear 80, when two clients of his third business, an executive coaching firm with clients nationwide, said the same thing to him that same week. John, I need tools. For both clients' companies, the vision was clear and their teams were healthy and cohesive. But accountability, discipline, and execution to link the two were absent. John went looking for tools and found the Entrepreneurial Operating System in the book Traction, and he's never looked back. We refer to this as EOS, and this has come up on several of the Pivotal Leader episodes from some of our other guests who use this system in their businesses, and that's why I wanted to bring John on this show. He's deeply loyal to his adopted hometown of Lincoln, Nebraska. He received all three of his degrees from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, a bachelor's degree in journalism, followed by a master's and doctoral degrees in political science. He met his wife of 19 years, Jamie, there, and they're raising their three children there. He has lived and traveled all over the world, and he can suggest what to eat and where in an impressive number of cities. And in this episode, he will reveal at least one city of some yummy food I'm dying to have. And while he charges a lot for his other services, his advice on eating out is always free. You're going to get this in this episode and so much more. So let's dive in and learn from John Fulwider. Hey, John, welcome to The Pivotal Leader.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, Gina.
I am so excited to have you on the show. Before we go any further, how do you say your last name?
Fulwider.
Fulwider. Okay. I always want to get that right when I record intros so that I don't mess up someone's name. So John Fulwider. It's always interesting how guests come to this show in different ways. When I first started and we were trying to find guests, and that was kind of painful in the beginning, and then you get a bunch of guests and then they refer a bunch of guests and they refer a bunch of guests and so on. And so there's this Nebraska connection going on I'm excited about, because I interviewed Paul Jarrett with Bulu Box, and then Ali Schwanke had been following me from that interview, and then we talked, and then she told me about you and said I should listen to a podcast you did with her. And I was like, I need to talk to this guy about EOS, and here you are.
I'm glad to be here. Ali Schwanke's a good friend. Paul Jarrett's a friend and a client. And Nebraska is the best state in the union. So I think you've chosen a good source of people to talk to.
I'm fascinated by Nebraska and this whole Silicon Prairie thing. And this is funny. You might laugh at this. I actually looked up airfare the other day for coming to Nebraska.
Oh man, I would strongly recommend it.
Yeah, because I'm coming there because you and I have all kinds of things to talk about outside of this podcast. Maybe we'll dive into that. Who knows? So let's jump right in. The thing that got me the most interested about you is EOS, because this comes up in so many of my podcast interviews with CEOs. And a year ago, had no idea what it was and got educated on it pretty quickly through the various guests on the show. And there seems to be this ongoing pattern, I think, that these really successful leaders and companies follow EOS. And that was a really interesting pattern to see for success. So instead of me talking about it, could you kind of jump in and tell me and our audience what the heck EOS is?
Glad to. So EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And what this is a complete proven system with a set of simple, practical tools that help entrepreneurial leadership teams get three things. And those things are vision, traction, and healthy. So vision means first getting your leaders 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you plan to get there. Traction means helping those same leaders execute on that vision with discipline and accountability. And then healthy means helping those leaders form a healthy and cohesive leadership team. Because Gina, as you and I and all of your listeners know, leaders don't always get along so very well together. And so from there, as goes your leadership team, so goes the rest of your company.
Right.
You get to the point where everyone is rowing in the same direction, gaining consistent traction to execute on that vision, and moving forward together, shoulder to shoulder, as a healthy and cohesive team.
Where does EOS come from?
Yeah, so EOS is often also called Traction because that's the name of the book that kind of launched this whole thing. Traction's written by an entrepreneur himself by the name of Gino Wickman.
How did you get into that? Let's kind of now go a little backwards of what had you been doing prior to this? Because you basically go into companies and help them with this, correct?
Yeah. So I'm an EOS implementer. That means that my role is as teacher, facilitator, and coach. I'm going to go in and teach you the entrepreneurial operating system, teach you the tools that we use to help companies increase value. I'm going to facilitate the answers in the room. I'm not a consultant. I'm not a guru. I'm not a strategist. 90% of the time, the answers to how to grow a company are in the room. They're in the heads of the leadership team. So I'm just going to facilitate those out and put them in the EOS context. And then finally, I'm going to serve as a coach, which means that, we're playing this great game of business. You can't always see yourself playing the game. I can. And so I'm just going to suggest ways to play that game better.
You're teaching, you're facilitating, you're coaching. I found it interesting when you said 90% of the time the answers are already there for people and in their heads. Why do they need someone like you to come out and help them?
Man, it can just be really hard to have open and honest conversations about differing views about the future of a company without a disinterested outsider there to be interested in nothing but the growth of the business and nothing but pulling the best kind of ROI out of the experience. And by ROI, I don't mean return on investment. I mean return on intelligence.
Ooh.
So hopefully your leadership team is composed of smart, talented, passionate people. And we just need to make sure that in every discussion we have about the growth of your business, all of those voices are heard. So we get that ROI, we get that return on that intelligence.
I love that because I think, back to your point, 90% of the time the answers are there, the intelligence is there. But would you agree that everybody gets stuck in their day and in the day to day and maybe not tapping into the intelligence that already exists?
Yeah, they do get stuck in the day to day. They do think inside the box rather than outside the box. So, Gina, I've got a little bit of German heritage. So I'm a big fan of a quote from, it's either a German or an Austrian philosopher named Kurt Gödel, and so his quote is that you can't understand a system when you're inside it, right? And so
Yeah.
you need somebody who's outside of the business to kind of ask those questions that are going to pull you out of the day to day above the business and get you thinking about the long term greater good of the company.
Okay, so that's really fair, right? I think people can't really understand it when they're in it. So and I'm speaking as well as a trainer and as a coach and as a facilitator in my own business for clients. How do you tap into those companies that they can't see it, don't realize they need it? How do you get through to them to get them interested in what you're doing to help them?
The vast majority of my business comes by referral. It's people who love me and love EOS and love their friends, their fellow business owners and executives enough to want them to have the same kind of peace and profitability that they have in their businesses that EOS creates. So, somebody will be, Jane will be having a conversation with Bob, and Jane will say to Bob, "Hey, Bob, I know you've been frustrated with your business. Your people aren't performing. They're certainly not rowing in the same direction. You feel like your business is running you. You're not running it. I've been there. I felt that way. Then I met this guy named John. He introduced me to EOS. So I'm going to have John call you. When he does call, you should take his call. He's going to invite you to a 90-minute meeting to learn about EOS. He's going to show you the tools, show you the process. That meeting's totally worth your time. You should go." So that's how companies learn about EOS, and that's how they decide. The purpose of the 90-minute meeting is to, just have all your questions answered so you can decide two things. Hey, one, do we want to run our business on the Entrepreneurial Operating System? Because there's other ways to run your business, right? And if the answer to EOS is yes, do we want this John guy to help us implement EOS?
You mentioned, some of the frustrations of, they might have frustrations with people or the business might be running them. What are some other symptoms that a business might be having that they would benefit from EOS but don't know it? What are those pain points?
The number one pain point that entrepreneurial leadership teams come to us with is people. We at EOS Worldwide, we're really focused on measurement and everything. So we know 87% of the time it's people. They're not listening. They're not performing. They don't share the vision, not on the same page, not rowing in the same direction, right? Another concern is profit. There's not enough of it, or there's none of it. Again, there's control. Like you said, the business is running me. I don't feel like I'm running it. Another is my solutions. I just feel like everything that I've tried hasn't worked. I read a new business book every month and I take it to my leadership team. I say, man, everything's going to be different. And what's happening is that leadership team is getting cynical, and they're saying, "Oh, if we can just write out Gina's new idea for like smile and nod for like 30 days, she'll forget it and move on to the next thing." So there's that cynicism and that lack of engagement, right? And so those are some of the major frustrations that business owners, especially, but also the leadership teams of entrepreneurial companies come to me with.
How did you get into this and doing this? And what were you doing before you started doing this?
I was struck by lightning. I had an epiphany. So this EOS implementation, this business is my fourth business that I have founded in Lincoln, Nebraska. My third business was a national practice in executive coaching and strategic planning and team building. And so I had clients all across the country, right? And a weird thing happened one week. 2 regularly scheduled coaching calls with my CEO clients. They both said the same thing to me the same week in separate conversations. They said, John, I need tools. So here's briefly the story behind that. We'd been working on the vision. The vision was clear. We'd been working on the team. The team was healthy and cohesive, but the accountability, discipline, and execution that were supposed to link those two, those were absent. My clients were frustrated. They said, hey, go find me a tool. I went looking. I found the book Traction, read it, and I said, oh my goodness, this is it. This is the answer. And I can't do that Frankenstein's monster of kind of disconnected solutions that I had been doing before.
Yeah, gosh, I feel that pain.
When I know that this is the answer for the businesses that I care about. So I shut down that third business and launched the fourth a little over a year ago. So
oh, wow.
My 1 year anniversary with this fourth business was about 2 weeks ago.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to you. Well, that's awesome. And I know one of the reasons, you were looking at this too was because you didn't want to have to travel as much.
Yeah, that's right. Third business, clients all over the country, Oregon, DC, Arkansas, South Dakota, a bunch of other places, and on the road a lot, sometimes for as long as 7 days at a time. And I've got young kids at home. My wonderful wife and I have been married for 19 years, but we are an infertile couple, and so we got a really late start on having children. So at about the time that third business is really rocking, my oldest child is around 3, turning 4, 4.5, and so forth, just really starting to notice that I'm gone, really upset about it, big crying fit on both sides, me crying, her crying whenever I would leave on these long trips. And then, Gina, it got worse. So I did this crazy trip where I was out in LA for 4 days with one client, took the red eye to Kansas City to like a 2-day conference, and I just got really, really sick. Didn't know what the heck was going on, but man, I felt terrible. I had like a rash breaking out all over my body. I was in pain. I wasn't thinking straight and everything. I managed to get from downtown Kansas City to an urgent care clinic out in the burbs, right? And I'm sitting there in this urgent care clinic talking with the PA or the nurse practitioner, and she's like, "Man, John, I don't know what's wrong with you, but that looks like that hurts and itches. So I'm just going to give you a topical cream and send you on your way." And so I'm like, "Okay." And then she says, well, wait a second. Let me bring in a colleague. So another woman comes in, and this is a really small room. Okay. This is basically a glorified coat closet. So here I am, I'm being poked and prodded by 2 medical professionals, and they're whispering to themselves like, psst, psst, could it be? No, there's no chance. Could it be? No.
Oh my God.
No. Okay. And so they say, let me bring in some other people. So now there are 4 medical professionals in this coat closet with me, and they're focusing on me. They're saying, could it be? No, it can't be. And they say, we think you have chicken pox.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound very fun. And they're like way more concerned than I am. And, they're saying like, this is serious. And then I call my wife, who's a nurse and a nursing professor, and she loses it over the phone because it turns out when you get chicken pox as an adult, it can cause amputation and death.
Oh, gosh.
I didn't know about that. So I had to be sort of medevaced by my dad. He drove down 3.5 hours from Lincoln, Nebraska to Kansas City to get me because I could barely see straight, right? And so, it gets worse, right? So if you're doing the math here, I've been on the road for 7 days already, and then I have to quarantine myself in the basement for 10 days when I get home. So I don't get to hug my daughters or kiss my wife for 17 days.
Wow.
And that was not acceptable. And so I promised my daughter after that I would never travel for client work again. And I've kept that promise to her.
Wow. That's really all it takes, especially in this line of work. I went through something similar last year, getting very sick, and it impacted me greatly. Like when you're selling you and you're sick, you have to start looking at other streams of revenue and putting a better system in place.
Right. Yeah. When you're selling you and you're covered with pustular sores that make you look rather frightening in your visage and appearance. Yeah,
it's not very attractive.
Not good for the bottom line, no.
Unless you're getting like the sympathy or pity contracts, like let's help this guy out.
That's not the kind I'm going for now.
Yeah. So you go through this crazy chicken pox and pus thing that gave me a visual, and that was one of your epiphanies. But did you have any regrets in closing that third business, or what was hard about transitioning from that to a situation that was going to give you the lifestyle you wanted?
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about the visual. And, to your listeners, I'll do them a favor by not providing you a photo to include in the show notes.
Thank you.
You're okay with that because I do have a photo.
No, we're good.
Sent it to my nurse wife to help her see how sick I was.
We'll leave your very good-looking headshot as the only photo.
Oh, you're too kind. It was actually a really easy decision to make, Gina. I feel really blessed that I had an experience about 3 months after that episode that really cemented it for me that I had made the right decision. So, I had promised my oldest daughter, Lillian, I'd promised her, honey, daddy's never going to travel like that for clients again. And 3 months later, I had an early morning meeting in Lincoln, in town, for which I needed a bunch of facilitation gear, flip charts, markers, flip chart stands, all that kind of stuff, bunches of stuff. Had it in my rolly cart, right? And I'm rolling it down the hall on our wood floors, past my daughter's bedroom, her closed door, and suddenly she screams from her bedroom, "Daddy, don't leave." Tears out of the room, grabs onto me. She's sobbing. I collapse to the floor sobbing. And she's reliving that time where I was just on the road constantly and she was seeing me. And I realized, that my rolly cart sounds exactly like my rollerboard suitcase.
Oh.
Rolling past her door on the wood floors.
What a trigger.
Yeah. I still do travel for business. So EOS implementers, to maintain our certification, we're required to get together with all 187 EOS implementers across the world at least twice a year at what's called the quarterly collaborative exchange, preferably all 4 quarters of the year. But I'm fortunate in that, it's in Detroit, and I can get there with just one overnight. So I'm away for an overnight, and then I'm typically home the next night.
Well, that certainly is going to cement it for a lot of people who really want to have the right home life, right?
Yeah. Well, and it ties in really well with something that we call the EOS Life. And so we EOS implementers, we people who help companies with this, we say that we're going after these major bullet points, doing work we love with people we love, making a significant impact while being fairly compensated, and having time available for other pursuits. And what's cool about the EOS Life is that that's also exactly what we want for our clients, especially the business owners who run these businesses. A little later on in our engagement with each of my clients, I introduce the concepts and I say, man, EOS is designed to get you everything that you want out of your business, right? And so we're well on the way to getting you that. Let me introduce kind of the next level. Let's get you a life where you're doing work you love, with people you love, having a significant impact, being fairly compensated. And then here's the key thing for entrepreneurs, with time available for other pursuits.
Yeah.
The owners who run EOS, they run the Entrepreneurial Operating System, they have traction in their business, they're not working 80 hours a week. Their businesses don't run them, and they have time available for other things that they care about.
Have you seen these significant changes happen for your clients who maybe went from not having time to kind of getting that freedom back?
The best example I can think of, I can't take a ton of credit for it, and it's your former guest on a previous episode, Paul Jarrett. He and his wife, Stephanie, are co-founders of an Inc. 5000 list fastest growing business. They are they're building and rebuilding subscription boxes for billion-dollar global brands. They've got a 1-year-old, and they already have the life balance. I mean, they're not working 80-hour weeks. They're not working 100-hour weeks. They're being a great mom and dad to their son and running just an amazing company that creates tremendous value for their clients.
When I created this podcast, it was about getting in the minds and brains of CEOs and leaders and entrepreneurs, because I really see such a significant connection with culture and having a company that runs well and profits and having a strong culture in place. And you work with a lot of companies and you help a lot of companies with that. I'd like to know your opinion on what company culture is and should be, and what kind of culture you've created for yourself.
In EOS running companies, company culture is defined as your core values. These are the 3 to 7 essentials that define who great people are for this company. And we need to define great people because you can't achieve your vision without great people. And so when we're working on culture, we get the leadership team together and we say, what is at your core? Because the values always come from the core. They always come from the leadership team. And we say, what are the 3 to 7 kind of behaviors that you expect daily out of your people that define great people for your company? And we say your core values, then they're not some words on a motivational poster or some marketing material on the About Us page of your website, but rather they are the powerful tools with which we hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize people. And you were asking about what are my core values. So every EOS implementer subscribes to the same core values. They're just what we internalize, and they're part of what makes the EOS implementer community so amazing, because like all 187 of us live and breathe and challenge each other to excel at these 5 things. So They are be humbly confident, do the right thing, grow or die, do what you say, and help first.
I feel like I have all those. What do you know?
That must be why we resonate so well, you and I, Gina.
I know. That's awesome. We probably feel very strongly that having very clear core values that you don't just put on that sign, but that you literally live by, that eventually is going to benefit the company and the people that work at the company. Would you agree with that?
Not eventually does it benefit, but hopefully it starts benefiting right away, because companies that run EOS, they use core values in their hiring process as a filter, right?
Mm-hmm.
The core values are stated strongly and often, and they're designed to attract the right people for your company and repel the wrong people. We have a recommended hiring process where at the final stage of interviewing, if the company is of an appropriate size to make this happen, the CEO or the owner sits the prospect down and gives them what we call the core values speech. And this is actually an attempt to talk the person out of taking a job at our company, to kind of scare them away from it and say, man, this is just what we live and breathe. We're humbly confident. And then you give a few examples. We do the right thing. You give a few examples. We grow or die. You give a few examples, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want you to know, Gina, that if that's not you, man, it's just going to be really uncomfortable for you here at this company. And it's honestly not going to work out. So I just want to make sure that you're on board with these values, because this is us. It defines our everyday.
That's really interesting. And I read that in Traction. I read one of those examples of giving that core value talk and then breaking it down and what that means. And I think it's something that's missing. I think a lot of interviewees may say, oh yeah, I can fit in here. I can do that. But I don't think the discussions necessarily always happen to be given that clear information on, can you step up to living these same core values that the company does?
Right. And the thing about the discussion is the discussion happens ideally before the job offer's made. And then it happens 90 days later, because what we recommend in terms of a regular process of checking core values alignment is what's called a quarterly conversation. And part of the conversation is talking with the now employee about your company's 3 to 7 core values. Are you living them?
I had a previous guest, we were talking about culture and how important it is. And I'm giving a talk to a group of his colleagues. And he said, if you can find a way to show me statistics or case studies that show that a healthy culture is going to make a company more profitable, boy, that would be some powerful stuff. What would you say to that?
All you need to do is read the classic management thinker, Peter Drucker, who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that you do is, the preeminent expert on culture, Patrick Lencioni.
Yeah.
You just read his book, The Advantage. And I mean, if you're not convinced by like the first few paragraphs in the first chapter of that book, where it says, companies need to be both healthy and smart to succeed, and smart is already taken. If you don't believe that, I don't know how much more I could convince you, because I think the facts are pretty clear that there is a surplus of like super ultra talented, intelligent, and smart people. And there's companies that do what they do with the best possible strategy and the best possible smarts. There's so many of them who are hyper smart that you can't differentiate yourself in the marketplace on smarts. You
Mm-hmm.
need to differentiate yourself on team health, which goes back to culture.
Who do you think is the most important person on a company team?
There is not a most important person on a company team. Successful entrepreneurial leadership teams take a team effort to running the business. This is said, sort of to contradict maybe the heroic owner model, the I'm the founder, I can and should do it all, I need to be the smartest person in the room, et cetera, et cetera. That's no way to run a company. That's no way to run your life. You don't have to be lonely at the top. There is a proven, complete system with a set of simple, practical tools that helps you build a leadership team that's going to complement your efforts, that's going to get you, the owner, into your unique ability, doing only what you love and are best at, so that you can delegate and elevate those things that you hate and are bad at to others. And together, you're going to grow the company.
There was something that came over in your bio. I'm looking at it right now. I got a good chuckle out of this because I could really appreciate it being in a similar role. It says, while he charges a lot for his services, his advice on eating out is always free.
Yeah. So
I love that. I love both parts of that sentence.
Well, I always like to redeem challenging parts of my past and pull the good out of everything. And so all those trips away from my kid, I was going to some pretty exciting cities, and my first stop was always at the best restaurants in town because I'm a foodie and everything. And so as a result of all that travel, I can recommend the best place to eat in a surprising number of cities, and I relish doing it.
I love that you put it out there while he charges a lot for his other services. It's such a strong value statement, in my opinion, and I really appreciate that. So what's your favorite place to eat in the country? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, yeah, Zahav.
Okay.
So Zahav is an Israeli tapas restaurant that's near Society Hill in Philadelphia. And so if I'm traveling, there's a different set of favorites in Lincoln. My favorite foodie week would always be in Lincoln, Nebraska. But I understand that not a majority of your listeners are going to immediately avail themselves of the tremendous opportunity to come enjoy our foodie scene here in Lincoln. So I'll give something that has an international airport next to it. And so that's Philadelphia. So the Zahav, again, Israeli tapas. The chef, Michael Solomonov, I hope I pronounced his name right, has like 5 restaurants in Philly, including Federal Donut, which is a great donut shop. He's got a chicken restaurant. Anyway, tremendous chef. But what you want to get at Zahav is, first, you want to sit at the bar, because it is impossible to get a reservation at this place, right? But you can just walk into the bar, sit down, and order from the full tapas menu. And you can have just immediate access to the freshest cocktails that they can make. So what you want to do is you want to order, I think it's called the Turkish hummus. And so it's going to arrive in this little cast iron pan of homemade hummus that has a divot, kind of sunk into it, where there's a lake of butter and then whole chickpeas floating in the lake. And
wow.
They're going to just constantly deliver stack after stack of dangerously hot and fresh pita, where if you bite into it, you'll get a steam burn. So you kind of have to peel off a little side to let some of the steam out. and then you dip it in the hummus and the lake of butter, and it's just amazing. So my perfect non-Lincoln foodie week would be eating at Zahav for like 3 dinners out of the week, and then eating at Reading Terminal Market, the block in size indoor food court, for every lunch that week. Probably Federal Donut for breakfast 2 or 3 days, and then maybe one of the Solomonov restaurants some other day, or maybe Monk's Cafe, which is a mussels and frites place with like Belgian beers.
How do you spell Zahav? Do you know?
Zahav.
Okay. I'll include that in the show notes. You never know. Somebody might be dying to go. I know I am, the way you describe that hummus. I like want it right now.
I want it right now too.
I do plan on coming to visit you, so I'll let you fill me in later on all the places to eat in Lincoln.
Absolutely. Delighted to do so.
One last question. Where do you get your support or find your tribe of advisors or mentors or coaches? How do you get help for you?
Well, that's the cool thing, Gina. So it's built right into EOS Worldwide. When you become an EOS implementer, you sign on to the EOS implementer community. We get together, like I said, quarterly for the quarterly collaborative exchange, where we're challenging each other to master implementation of EOS. We're all on a journey toward mastery. And so we're just getting better and better. We're supporting each other in our business development efforts, and coaching and encouraging each other to live the EOS life. There's weekly coaching calls. We each have our own coach. We call each other all the time. We've got a private LinkedIn group. I mean, it is a pretty sweet deal. In my third business, I got pretty close to a great community through a private Facebook group that a number of coaches and consultants were in. And it was wonderful, but it pales in comparison to the quality of the EOS implementer community.
If people want more information on how to, now, from what I understand last time we talked, you are happy to stay in Lincoln. So you're not traveling out of Lincoln, correct?
No.
So if people in Lincoln want to hire you,
yeah, absolutely.
They can do that.
Or if anybody wants to travel to Lincoln, I'd be delighted to have them. But there's 187 of us around the world. So if you're in Philadelphia and you're listening to this right before you went to Zahav, have a Turkish hummus, and you're like, now that my tummy's full, I'm kind of thinking about growing my business. I mean, you just go to eosworldwide.com, and in the upper right, there's a little tab called Find an Implementer. Put in your zip code, and any of the people in the EOS implementer community are going to be masters of the craft. Have a 90-minute meeting with an EOS implementer. See if they're a personality fit for you, because everybody's going to be the same in terms of mastery of the craft. There are going to be personality differences, right? And so find that person you'd want to spend full-day leadership team retreats in a room with, hire them, and then start skyrocketing your business growth.
Awesome. And if people do want to connect with you or come to Nebraska because it's really happening there, what are the best ways to get in touch with you or learn more about you and your business? And we really haven't talked about the name of your business, Gear 80. Yeah. So how can people connect better with you?
The name of the business is Gear 80. The web address is gear80.co. So that's GEAR80.co, not .com. That's so 2004.
I know. Everyone I've talked to in Nebraska, that's been on the podcast, nobody has a .com. Maybe it's a Nebraska thing. I got a kick out of that.
Or maybe it's that all the .coms are used thing.
Yeah. I was like, wow, this must totally be a Nebraska thing.
No, it's
That's awesome.
It's a supply and demand thing, I think.
Awesome. Did we cover all the ways to get a hold of you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm at John M. Fulwider there. Also on Twitter, at John M. Fulwider. And on Facebook, I have a Gear 80 page as well. If you search Facebook, you'll find me there as well for cute pictures of my kids and
yes, very cute
pictures of all the things that I'm eating. I'm on Instagram as well.
Awesome.
I do not have a MySpace page, and I totally missed out on the Friendster thing, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. I think we have enough ways to connect with you, so I think they'll be able to overlook MySpace. Thank goodness. Right. Thank you so much for your time today. Are there any last words or final strategies or words of advice or encouragement you would want to give a leader or an entrepreneur before we wrap up the show?
I would just say something we like to say is that vision without traction is hallucination. You can have all the plans for growing your business in the world, and you can even have your team agreeing with you on that vision of where you want to go and how you want to get there. But if you don't have traction, if you don't have the accountability, discipline, and execution in place to realize that vision, you're just going to be frustrated. So go get some traction.
Thank you so much, John, for joining me today on The Pivotal Leader.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Gina. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, thanks. Well, hold on for a second. We're just going to wrap up the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. The Pivotal Leader is a production of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. You can find show notes for this episode, including contact information for John, on our website at thepivotalleader.com. Remember, you can find our podcast on iTunes, and if you're an iTunes subscriber, please leave a rating and review. Don't forget to email me any questions you might have about employee engagement and customer acquisition at gina@pivot10.com. And I'll answer those either personally in an email or in an upcoming episode. And until next time, if you're feeling stuck in your business, it's probably time to pivot. You've been listening to The Pivotal Leader. To learn more about how to shift your culture and pivot to success, visit pivot10results.com. That's pivot10results.com.